How's it going, everybody? TK here, and welcome back to Genesis Barbell. We are continuing our Advanced Protocols series, today talking about monster sets. This is a lovely little training modality that we like to use for accessories and maybe some variation work, and I'm going to be covering exactly how and why we utilize this method in our training. So tune in and enjoy. All right, so let's get straight into this idea of monster sets or giant sets or rest pause sets, whatever you want to call it. Okay, yes, there might be some slight differences between these three. It doesn't really matter what you call it. I'm going to explain to you exactly the modality of training that I do that I call monster sets. I've been using them, my clients have been using them. It's given us some great stimulus and great results. Okay, and I'm going to explain exactly how we do these. So first off, just to orientate ourselves, okay, we've got our spreadsheet over here. I'm going to compare straight sets versus monster sets. We're going to be looking at the total volume in comparison with these two, the benefits of monster sets, and of course when we want to use them and when we don't want to use them. So with monster sets, okay, typically, just to give you a brief overview practically so that you know exactly what we're talking about, a straight set obviously is just one set, normal rest period, another set, normal rest period, with basically the same amount of weight on the bar or machine or whatever it is, okay, until you've completed the total amount of sets, okay, given the rep range. With a monster set, typically what we'll do is have the same amount of total volume, okay, as we would for a normal straight set, and we will complete set after set successively with a shortened rest period until we get to the same amount of total reps, okay, or total volume. So let's get this comparison going properly. So we've got the hack squat over here as our example, and typically one would do, let's say for example, 4 sets of 15 reps with 100 kilos on the machine. This is all going to be arbitrary. It's all just going to be examples. Okay, 4 sets of 15 reps, let's say till failure, with 100 kilos on the machine. That's 60 total reps, 4 sets of 15, 60 total reps with 100 kilos on the machine. That is our total tonnage. That is our total volume. Now for the monster set, okay, given the same specs, 100 kilos, our first set will of course be 15 reps. Okay, if we're going till failure in the straight set modality, okay, and go to failure in this monster set modality, the first set will look exactly the same, of course. Okay, so 15 reps until we hit failure. Now we've got our shortened rest period. Again, this amount of time is arbitrary. If 2 minutes is your normal rest period, that's fine. Typically, I would say maybe increase it slightly, but it's completely arbitrary. It's just an example. Let's say it's much shorter than you used to. So after the first set, okay, we're doing 15 reps for our first one. We rest 2 minutes, okay? And then the next set that we do, because we're slightly fatigued, it will only get 10 reps because the rest period is shorter. Our next set, after 2 minutes, we only get 7 reps. And the set after that, again, 7 reps. And again, 7 reps. And this is typically what it looks like. From what I found with myself and all of my athletes, this has been quite consistent. We start off the monster set with our first set being a particular amount of reps, let's say 15, and eventually by the third or fourth set, we are around 40 to 50% of that rep range. So our second set will be quite a bit of a drop down, and by our third or fourth set, we'll be around 40 to 50% of that range. So we start off with 15 and eventually get to this consistent number of 7 reps per set. Now, if you look at the difference here, we've got 60 reps on either side. If you count these up, 15, 10, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, that is 60 total reps with the same amount of weight. So the volume here is exactly the same as a straight set method, but we just got a whole lot more sets. Does it really matter? Well, not really. If we were to do 4 sets here of 10 reps with more weight on the bar, okay, that would just be 40 reps with more weight on the bar or the machine. Okay, so that volume would also be different. Okay, yet for most people, like we don't really catch too much of what we're changing. We love to look at sets and think this is total volume. And to an extent, yes, it's true. Okay, reps and weight are interchangeable. But if we actually calculate the total volume, okay, it doesn't really matter how you manipulate anything as long as your total volume is the same. Okay, so we've got 4 sets of 15 here, 60 reps with 100 kilos. We've got 7 sets of 15, 10, and then 7 consistently. That's 60 total reps again with 100 kilos. Now, that is what a monster set will typically look like. So why do we do this? What are the benefits from this? First off, something called local hypoxia. Okay, you might be familiar with this word, you might not. Okay, it's basically just saying that the muscle that you are working is in an anaerobic state or lack of oxygen state. Okay, so based on a whole lot of literature and a whole lot of evidence out there, okay, we know that force production increases and hypertrophy happens in the more hypoxic zone or the more hypoxic environment. That's why we typically train really intensely or closer to failure. Anywhere between 5 reps away from failure until 1 rep or at failure. Okay, that's going to be the range where we're getting the most out of our training. We have to train intensely to get results, right? So that is what that theory is based off of. The tons of literature that suggests that this state of hypoxia is preferable for hypertrophy and strength improvements, okay? And that's exactly what we're trying to do here. So how do we do this? How does the monster set relate to this? Well, if we're thinking of doing 4 sets of 15 reps, I'm going to give you a blatant example here. 4 sets of 15 reps. If you think about it, the first 10 reps, typically, very arbitrary, remember, not necessarily the first 10, but let's say arbitrarily, the first 10 reps, okay, is just to get the muscle into a hypoxic state. By the time we get to rep 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15, those are the really effective reps in the lack of oxygen environment that's going to drive hypertrophy and force production increases. Okay, so the first 10 reps are there to get us hypoxic. Then we have a full rest. We're completely fresh for the next set before we do the next set. Okay, and again, the first 10 reps are just to get us hypoxic. It's those last 5 reps that are effective. If we were to do 25 reps, the first 20 reps would be there to get us hypoxic. It's those last 5 reps that are effective, arbitrarily. So in that case, we've got 5 reps here that are effective, 5 over here, 5 over here, and 5 over here. So typically, we only have 20 effective reps. Okay, that's a normal modality to train in, and there's nothing wrong with that. If we were to compare it to a monster set, if we were to take, again, the last 5 reps are effective. So 5 reps here, 5 reps here, 5 reps here. On each one, we're ending up with 35 effective reps. That's almost double the amount of effective reps than straight sets. So in this case, what we're actually doing is we inducing slightly more peripheral fatigue in the motor units of the muscle that's working, causing it to be in a very hypoxic environment, which brings down the amount of total reps that we can actually do per set, because we're entering the set into a slight hypoxic state already because we haven't allowed our muscle to fully recuperate yet. And typically, yes, there are some suggestions for entering each set very fresh, but I personally believe, based on the literature that I've read and the experiences that I've gotten, all right, that typically those movements are the more fundamental compounds that have really, really high systemic demand. Now, we're going to get to those in the exercise selection slot, okay? But typically for something like powerlifting, the bench, squat, and deadlift, the main lifts, yes, you want to be fresh, because remember, stability and skill is for the most part, okay, going to need to be there for the lift. And if we have a whole lot of systemic and peripheral fatigue, it might hold us back from accomplishing a good, well-skilled and well-performed squat, bench, or deadlift, or variation of that. So typically, these will be appropriate for our accessory work, but we'll get there, okay? But yes, if we're talking about the muscle itself, the local hypoxia, to get as much stimulus on that particular muscle that we're working, this is, in my opinion, going to be the better way to achieve that. But if it still hasn't convinced you, if you still don't think this is the smartest way to go about it, that is fine. Okay, I'm going to give you a couple more benefits to maybe try and convince you to at least utilize this once or twice in your training, just to see how it goes. Because I can tell you now, the amount of pump, the amount of stimulus that you'll get out of this type of modality of training is going to be significantly higher than your typical straight sets, even though there are times when these will be the better option, but we'll get to that. So what's the second reason that we want to be doing this? Well, time efficiency. Wow. There we go. So typically when we're doing our monster sets with the shortened rest period and less amount of reps per set, okay, we're just spending less time doing this movement. And by the time that we're done with our monster set, we can't actually believe that we finished it so quickly. And so in terms of the amount of work that we do in the gym, that is exactly the same because our total volume is exactly the same, but we're just spending less time accomplishing that with this monster set modality. So typically this is fantastic for people that just can't get themselves to train for longer periods of time because of work commitments or other lifestyle factors that come in the way. And typically people that just can only spend a certain amount of hours at the gym per week, this is going to be fantastic for them to use because the time efficiency is a whole lot better. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, the next idea is systemic fatigue. Now, we've spoken a little bit about not wanting to enter a set fatigued. Okay, here's a different outlook on this whole fatigue aspect that might blow your mind a little bit. So, when we are comparing these 4 sets of 15 versus the monster set over here, okay, if we look back at those first 10 reps only getting us hypoxic, think about it like this. If the first 10 reps of every set is only getting you into a hypoxic state, what benefit really is there during those first 10 reps? Well, yes, we want to get hypoxic, but as soon as we're there are ways in which to sustain that hypoxia by shortened rest periods, right? That's the idea of the monster set. But if we're doing our straight sets and the first 10 reps of every set is just to get us hypoxic, what we're actually doing is spending a whole lot more time just going through motions, allowing the joints and the connective tissue to be under strain, allowing the muscle tissue to be under strain and becoming more and more damaged for lack of stimulus, okay? And we actually just causing a whole lot more systemic fatigue, okay? Think about it like this. The less effective reps you're getting with the same amount of volume, the more non-effective reps we're getting with the same amount of volume, right? And so those non-effective reps are actually just causing us a whole lot of systemic fatigue. Now, if we were to say, cool, well, if we're doing 7 total sets here in order to get 35 effective reps, we'll just do 7 total sets here to get 35 effective reps. Well, that's fine, but again, we're doing a whole lot more sets with a whole lot more total reps. That's going to cause us some systemic fatigue. Okay, fatigue that's going to be influencing the rest of our training in the day, the rest of our training in the week. Our total systemic or central nervous system fatigue is going to accumulate a whole lot faster doing these than doing the monster sets. Okay, so typically the monster set is a great way to minimize fatigue. It's a fatigue management protocol. So what do we have here? We've got hypoxic state, okay, that's going to cause better growth and strength improvements, okay, because we're getting more effective reps. We spend less time in the gym, okay, because the shortened rest periods and less amount of reps per set allow for that. And we got much less systemic fatigue with a whole lot more stimulus. That's going to help us recover better from session to session, from exercise to exercise. Honestly, this is probably one of the most amazing modalities of accessory training or hypertrophy training that I have found to be effective for your goals. It is absolutely phenomenal. Now, again, there are some cases when it's not necessary or not beneficial, and we'll have a look at that right now. So next up is picking the right exercises and discarding the ones that aren't going to be useful. Okay, so the first idea typically is unilateral exercises. Okay, I typically still use monster sets for some unilateral movements. Okay, more so upper body movements. So maybe we can say here unilateral lower body movements. Okay, because for the most part, we are controlling rest periods here while we're doing the one leg, going on to the next leg. Okay, that other leg is busy resting. And so if we were to do one leg, the next leg, and then we've got like 10 or 20 seconds or maybe 30 seconds if we're lucky, before doing the next leg again, we're just going to be so tired, so taxed cardiovascularly that we're not going to be able to keep up and get significant stimulus. And we're actually going to get way too tired before we even get muscularly fatigued. So typically unilateral movements, mostly lower body movements, not necessarily a great idea, especially the upper body ones that need less rest periods. So for biceps and delts, typically 30 to 45-second rest periods, okay, because they recover very, very quickly. And so if we're doing one arm, like a leaning dumbbell lateral with one arm and then the next arm, by the time we're done with this arm, we need to do this arm again. And so it's a little bit unpractical doing that, okay? Now the idea of cardiovascular fatigue is the next one. So cardio-intensive exercises. So some lower body movements can be really, really taxing on the cardiovascular system. Something like front squats have a high demand. Some other lower body movements that you can possibly think of, maybe like an RDL type or stiff-legged deadlift, those can be very taxing on the cardiovascular system, and so not necessarily the best option here for monster sets, just because we will be cardiovascularly fatigued before we are muscularly fatigued, and that's going to stand in the way of better stimulus, better growth, and strength improvements. Okay, what's the next one? Well, high systemic lifts. Again, as I've mentioned slightly previously, squat, bench, and deadlift, and the main variants where there's a lot of stability, a lot of skill, a lot of bracing, a lot of focus and concentration to be able to perform the lift well. Okay, if we can't utilize those tools, because that's pretty much most of the sport, okay, along with the strength and the muscle mass and etc. Okay, but that's a big deal as part of the sport, right? And so these high systemically demanding lifts can require a whole lot more than just stimulus on the muscle. And so we can't necessarily use this method for these lifts because a lot of other things will just stand in the way of our progression with these lifts if all that we're focusing on is muscular stimulus and not improving the lift itself. Okay, so typically not the best idea for the main lifts. And then next up, okay, is going to be lower rep ranges. Oopsie. So, for example, okay, if we were to do, let me take a muscle group that gets very well stimulated with low reps. Okay, maybe something like, let's say, stiff-legged deadlift. Let's say that this systemic idea is taken out of the equation, and we want to do like a stiff-legged deadlift for sets of 5 reps, sets of 6 reps. If we are throwing in this monster set modality now, pretty much what's going to happen is we're going to be ending up doing, remember, 40 to 50% of that range consistently, okay? And so if we're doing sets of, let's say, 6 reps, and we end up only getting 2 reps for the last couple of sets, yes, that's very close to failure, but oh my word, we could have gotten a lot more effective reps if we were to do 5 reps before failure with a lot less fatigue as well. So there's that downside of exponential fatigue when all we're doing is working in that 1 RIR or 2 RIR, or in other words, RP 8, 9, and 10. If we're only working in that range for literally every set, that's some exponential fatigue that we also don't want. So in that case, okay, yes, we're getting some really effective reps, but we're pushing it because we're getting a whole lot of fatigue out of it as well. And so with movements that you typically want lower rest periods with, lower rep ranges with, okay, typically the monster set is not going to be ideal there because we want to get a couple more reps than 2 or 3, okay? So picking the higher rep ranges is going to be a great idea, okay? Your lateral raises, your curls, your push downs, basically anything Upper body is going to be a fantastic idea. Quads going to be a fantastic idea. Glutes, absolutely amazing tool to use for the glutes as well. You can pretty much use it for everything. Just keep in mind those rep ranges are going to be important just to take note of, because we want to make sure that we're getting the most out of doing the least. That's always our goal, the minimum effective dose, and then improving and increasing from there. So that's basically the idea behind monster sets. Typically, I can say whatever I want, go give them a try. I promise you, it'll be fantastic to utilize. Just a quick little tip if you want to know about rest periods and how to use them. Pretty much anything upper body, okay, besides back and chest, I would say 30 to 45 seconds. Tricep movements, maybe a minute, okay. For your chest and back movements, a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes. And for anything lower body, 2 minutes is a good landmark. If it's something really small like a leg extension or a leg curl, maybe a minute and a half. And if it's something a little bit more like high intensive, up to 2.5 minutes is also fine. This is also malleable towards your needs. If you're used to really short rest periods, I would probably say give longer rest periods a try at first, just to see how nice that is with straight sets. Okay, being fresher, it'll just be novel stimulus. But once that's done, okay, you can get into shorter rest periods just because you're used to having short rest periods in general. So it's pretty much up to you as an individual as well. Play a little bit around with it and utilize this kind of idea where we want to end up with 40 to 50% of our initial rep range. If you're getting less than 40%, okay, maybe you want longer rest periods. And if you're getting more than 50%, okay, which I see often, shorter rest periods, we want that. All right. So the 5 rep range is going to be the mark for those last couple of sets, because we want those last 5 or 6 or 4 effective reps with each set. So keep that in mind. Go give it a go. It's fantastic to utilize, and I promise you, you'll be very, very impressed with whoever came up with this modality. I think it's brilliant. So that's it for this video, and please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.